Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In this video, we are going to discuss about a recent issue that has emerged that deals with the election of India, that is the issue of VVPAT. So we are going to discuss in details in this video, what does the term VVPAT stands for, what is its significance in the overall process of election, and why controversy has emerged around this particular issue, especially after the letter that has been written by the Congress leaders to the Election Commission of India in this regard. So if you look at the background of this particular story, basically the Congress leader Jairam he wrote a letter to the Chief Election Commissioner of India, Mr. Rajiv Kumar. In this letter, he has said that India, as you know, it is alliance of the parties that is led by major parties of India, such as opposition parties. We can say right now that is Congress is there, JDU is there, then we have the Trinamool Congress parties is there. So all these collectively these parties have formed a front that is called as India. So India front leaders had requested an appointment with the Election Commission of India to discuss and provide suggestions on the use of VVPATs during the process of election. Basically, this letter that Jairam has written to the Election Commission of India is based on the resolution that was passed in the meeting of the leaders of the bloc the previous day that happened in the last week of December. So the resolution has called for 100% verification of VVPAT slips. Now, what does the term 100% verification means? We are going to discuss while moving forward in this video. Now, before going into details about the current topic of discussion, let us try to understand what does the term VVPAT itself means. So, VVPAT basically is an abbreviated form of what we can call as voter verifiable paper audit trail. This basically is a machine that is attached to the ballot unit of the electronic voting machine. EVM, as we know, long ago, Election Commission of India has done away with the ballot system of voting, where earlier people used to put a stamp on a ballot paper and used to put that in a ballot box. Now the entire voting process has become what we can say associated with the electronic voting machines, and that has overall increased the fairness of election in India, which is a cornerstone of any democratic country. So basically, if we talk about electronic voting machine, it has two units. One, the ballot unit, another we can say is the VVPAT unit. Now, what does VVPAT actually do is whenever a individual casts his or her vote, a slip of paper is printed out. And in this slip of paper is basically the voter's choice is indicated that you indeed have voted to this particular party. That means voter, after pressing the electronic voting machine, the button on electronic voting machine, he can then verify that actually the person who he wanted to vote, the party who he wanted to vote, is the party who actually has received the vote. So though it remains behind the glass, that means a voter cannot access, touch or take away the VVPAT slip, the printed slip is visible for 7 seconds so that voter can see that the vote has been recorded correctly before it falls into the box underneath. That means it's not that the VVPAT slip is being destroyed after 7 seconds. It basically collects in a separate box, which then can be counted by the election authorities. The development of VVPAT, if we talk about, it began somewhere in the year 2010. It was this year when Election Commission of India has called for a meeting that was associated with bringing more transparency in the electoral process. It is at the end of this meeting, the idea of VVPAT machine was first mooted, and it is from where the idea has emerged. Further, after talking about this, Election Commission referred the matter of VVPAT to its technical expert committee. Following that, the deliberation happened in the committee. Following the deliberations, two agencies, that is BEL, that is Bharat Electronics Limited, and ECIL, that is Electronics Corporation of India Limited. These companies are the one who is responsible for making of EVM units, and that is why these companies were the first who came up with a prototype of VVPAT machines. Further, next year in 2011, once the VVPAT machines were constructed, or we can say a prototype was prepared by these organizations. The field trials was done by the Election Commission of India in Ladakh, Thiruvananthapuram, Cherrapunji, East Delhi and Jaisalmer. That means representing each of the regions of India. Further, 2 years later, in February 2013, the design of the VVPAT machine as formulated by BEL and ECIL was finally approved by the expert committee of ECI, and after several fine-tunings and holding more and more number of trials and taking feedback from the political parties, it was in 2013 the Election Commission of India decided to roll out VVPATs in the elections of India. Now we talk about the use of VVPATs. So basically VVPAT is something that cannot be used directly, because the election process of India is something that is governed by the constitution, where the constitution has vested the power authority in Election Commission of India, and Election Commission of India is working under the rules that is referred to the Conduct of Elections Rule 1961. So if any significant changes has to be done in the election process of India, the Conduct of Elections Rule 1961 has to be amended, and thus it was in year 2013 it was amended to allow for a printer with a drop box to be attached to the EVM. Thus, in first time in year 2013, 21 polling stations of Noksan Assembly constituency of Nagaland was where the first VVPAT was used. Now, this kind of facts become very important for the prelims examination, because this represents to a significant development in the overall electoral process of India. Then EC decided to introduce VVPATs in a phased manner once it became successful in the Nagaland. Then further 4 years later, in the month of June 2017, 100% of VVPATs began to be used in the polls all across India. And if we talk about the Lok Sabha elections, 2 years later, 2019, we know we have the last Lok Sabha elections. So it is during this Lok Sabha election, it became the first general election to have 100% of EVMs being attached to the voter verified paper audit trail or VVPAT. Now, the issue right now is about how many percentage or how much number of VVPAT slips have to be counted manually. So, in this regard, if you look at the development that has happened, the year was 2018. EC referred the matter to Indian Statistical Institute, which is a notable institute working in the field of mathematics. And it asked the ICI to come up with what we can say as a mathematically sound, statistically robust, and practically cogent sample size for the internal audit of the VVPAT slips with electronic result of EVM. Then further, EC also met the major political parties to discuss the issue, where demands for 10% to 100% counting emerged depending on the political parties. Then further, in the February month of 2018, EC mandated the counting of VVPAT slips of one randomly selected polling stations per assembly constituency. Gradually, as the demand or the political parties were not satisfied with this number, further in the month of April 2019, 5 polling stations from 1 polling stations per assembly constituency, the number was raised to 5 polling stations per assembly seat, following a Supreme Court judgment in on a petition that was filed by the then TDP leader N. Chandrababu Naidu. Now, as we know that currently the India Alliance has raised a demand that 100% of VVPAT the slips should be counted. So let us try to understand this point as well. India has passed a resolution, India Alliance we can say has passed a resolution where it has said that instead of VVPAT slip, three salient points have emerged from this resolution. First is they have demanded that instead of VVPAT slip falling in the box, if you remember we have discussed in the beginning that after the vote is recorded, for 7 seconds it is visible on the VVPAT slip to the voter that whether he has whether the vote he wanted to give has went to the right parties or not, and after that it falls into a box. So it has said that rather than falling into the box, it should be handed over to the voter, who shall then place it in a separate ballot box after having verified his or her choice. Second, it has also demanded that 100% counting of VVPAT slips should also be done. And third, it has said that by doing so, the full confidence of the people in the free and fair election system of the country will be restored. Now, what has Election Commission said regarding this earlier? So, Election Commission has discussed about this and has replied about this matter to the Supreme Court earlier, where it has clearly established that verification of VVPATs of 5 randomly selected polling station per assembly seat, with more than we know that total 4,000 assembly seats are there, and that will translate to roughly more than 20,000 EVM VVPAT systems, is well above the recommendation of ISI. If you remember, we have discussed earlier in the beginning, Election Commission of India has asked ISI to come up with how much percentage of VVPAT how much number of VVPAT slips should be counted. So recommendation was 479, but actual counting is of more than 20,000 systems. Second, ACI also has highlighted that in the entire history of last 7-8 years, there has not been a single case of transfer of vote that was meant for candidate A, but it went to a candidate B. This has not been detected. Third is the differences that sometimes emerge in count. It says it is not because of the we can say dysfunction of the VVPAT system or some technical error, it is largely traceable to the human errors like non-deletion of mock poll votes from the control unit of EVM or the VVPAT. And thus, if you try to understand that is there any valid ground for asking about 100% of the VVPAT slips counting, so basically we can understand it from the data that we have. Election Commission of India has clearly stated that in the last 7 years, since the VVPAT has basically been introduced in the election system of India, only 25 complaints have been registered out of the 118 crore voters who have voted or casted their vote. So this number itself is very, very low, almost negligibly low. Second, all of these complaints which were even filed were proved to be false. Third, EC said that the VVPAT was essentially an audit trail, so the voter could verify the vote at that instant itself. But following Supreme Court orders, slips were being tailed on a statistically robust basis. The next point it has mentioned that the pressing for 100% verification that has been raised by several political parties is thus a kind of regressive step. Why regressive step? Because the entire reason for the introduction of electronic voting machine was so that the manual counting of the voting machine, manual counting the vote from the ballot paper could be avoided, because it can translate into a huge error. Thus, it is a regressive thought and tantamount to going back to the days of manual voting using the ballot system. And thus, the manual counting of all VVPAT slips would take time also. That means the results of the elections will be quite delayed as compared to now, and introduce the potential of human error there as well. So taking these points into ground, ECI has said that this does not make any sense, that there should be a provision of 100% counting of VVPAT slips. So that is all about this particular issue. We have discussed about VVPAT, what it is, why was it introduced, what is its significance, and the current controversy regarding that. That is all for this video. Thank you very much.